The evolution of journalism is a fairly young phenomenon. The evolution of citizen journalism is much younger. So I think we have two forces here contending. One is people have the power to publish that they never had before, and people have sources of information, access to sources of information that they never had before. On the other hand, how do you determine what's true and what's not? There's an awful lot of false information. Tremendous amount of information, misinformation, and disinformation travels on these networks. So will citizen journalism not only democratize access to broadcasting, but will it serve, however imperfectly, as the kind of filter that mainstream journalism has served? I think there were rumors that circulated around the South Korean demonstrations that happened recently. Smart mob demonstrations happened in Korea over protests against the importation of beef from the US. And so there were many rumors that were being spread, along with really great citizen journalism that weren't true, like that mad cow disease was going to come along, and that the Koreans in particular were going to be wiped out racially by this mad cow disease. And really very tenuous connections between some scientific papers that had been written and about the fact that there have been a very low number of actual cases of mad cow disease. That's what a reporter working for an old-fashioned daily newspaper was expected to do as their job, is to find out from public records, well, how many cases of mad cow disease were there? And to trace down this rumor and see if there's any scientific proof for it, and then get the word out about what's accurate. So the journalist used to act as the gatekeeper that, again, however imperfectly, with gaping holes in their perfection, in fact, tried to keep out the mass of disinformation, bad information. So the question about citizen journalism is, will effective filters will enable a significant amount of the population to get the true information they need to get in order to remain citizens of a democracy? Well, traditional media, the smart ones, have been learning it for years. The Washington Post has bloggers. The New York Times has a great deal of digital media going. So they are definitely learning that sources outside their walls have a place in their ecosystem. They have particular brands, but I think that what you're seeing across the board are the very large profits that newspapers used to make eroding so rapidly that in order to answer to the stockholders, they're reducing their numbers of professional staff. So we're seeing the professional journalists and the traditional brands that people have trusted contracting. It's really an economic matter, and the question is how do people get the information that they need to have in order to remain free citizens of a democracy? That's not an economic matter, that's a political matter. Where are the institutions going to come from that's going to support that? And so that's very much in question now, and I think that we will see the survival of a few large media companies, but I think that's part of the problem. So how are you going to support citizen journalism is a question that arises. How are you going to get the kind of in-depth, global, investigative, deeply sourced, wide networks of knowledgeable people, the kind of journalism that the big names have done in the professional era? How is that going to be done? I'm not saying it's impossible. I think that it is, that new institutions will arise, but I think that the question has to be asked. And maybe it's not a for-profit enterprise, or maybe it's not a 20% profit enterprise.